Hello, welcome to SquishiVision, where I give my immediate, uncollected, unorganized thoughts on something I've just watched. Well, that's not all I do. I don't know why I started without opening. This is my reaction to Chapter 16, The Rescue of the Mandalorian. Completely, immediately after I've watched it, without having made any kind of organized or detailed analysis, just my thoughts as I will spew them off as they occur to me. Spoilers from the immediate get-go, because damn, wow, they did it. They killed Bib Fortuna. I love that guy. How will Star Wars recover? And some other stuff also happened. Yeah. Okay. So I do have a bunch of thoughts in this episode. I have some positives. I mean, well, I say that as if a vast majority of the episode was ultimately a negative experience, and it really wasn't. It was a good episode. It didn't have all the impact of last season, but that's fine. Things don't have to compete against themselves. They can stand alone as their own thing. I loved the interaction between Boba Fett. I can't remember her name, but I think I can excuse because she's a relatively new character in Star Wars. The other Night Owl that's with Bo-Katan. They can, and even in fact, they actually have Bo-Katan reacts them as well. So the Boba Fett and the Night Owl's interaction, I really enjoyed that. Because this is obviously, like, in the context of this show, the first time we get acknowledgement of Boba as a clone. Obviously that's established before, but in terms of the characters in play here, this is the first time. And this is the first time, I think, this has been the first time we've seen Boba with other Mandalorians. Visually, at least in canon, but at least maybe not in expanded universe legends, but in canon for sure. Seeing that interaction was actually kind of great. Like the whole kind of like how do I say, like, you know, a real Mandalorian kind of thing to say to him, which it's funny because it kind of echoes what Jaren said to them earlier in the season about them not being real Mandalorians. But at least Boba kind of, you know, admits to not being Boba is happy not being defined as a Mandalorian. It's not really his crack anyway. But like, you know, even then, kind of the spat between about kind of, you know, he's not just being Mandalorian, but he's still kind of like, you know, he's and likewise he kind of doesn't really care about their Mandalorian culture. So the whole thing where they argue about kind of him wearing the armor and them caring so much about Mandalore. And you know, eventually we get a kind of nice little tussle between them, and a very brief one, which is great. So that was fun. I like that part. So yeah, and I mean, yeah, a whole bunch of stuff happened sort of towards the end. I mean, there was no, I don't think there was anything particularly spectacular about the rest of the episode. It kind of stands out other than being good. But I mean, I don't have anything really more detailed to say to that because I've only just watched it once in the first time. I do think, you know, Jaren spent rather. I mean, I can excuse it because he was being choked and he was probably partially concussed and then severely concussed over being hit a whole bunch of times by a droid. But also, this is a guy who says fought droids, fought droids a whole bunch of times. It takes his time to actually employ any countermeasures to being choked. I'm like, dude, you've got like a whole bunch of arsenal on your on your armor, apart from your pistol. Like, use one of those. Use a jetpack. I'm sure your jetpack has a lot. I mean, it does have a lot. It has to have a lot of thrust and a lot of force. That could have been beneficial. It took him a while, really, because he was being choked for like a long time before he actually did something. I probably could have done something sooner. But yeah, that's just me, I guess. Also, like, did he? I should have muted that. Did he not think ejecting them into space would potentially not be the best course of action, considering they have jetpacks. I mean, it's not going to really get rid of them. I guess it was an immediate solution upon realizing that they could break through the doors. Also, how did they break through the blast doors through pure blunt force? How does that work? Especially because there's the slidey doors. So if the pressure is pushing them this way, how does hitting them like that cause them split open? Not. And the blast doors are meant to, survive, presumably Arsenal, but somehow were happy to be broken apart by droids. I'm sure are stronger than humanoid level, but compared to a blast door, I'm kind of like, I mean, we've seen humanoids, I guess, pull them apart. And so if they got in there and pulled them apart, that would make a bit more sense, I suppose. I don't get how punching the doors really helped. I guess they just didn't maintain their blast doors very well. Yeah, I mean, the rest of it was good. It's just very generic. It's like there was a whole bunch of like shootouts. Yep, they were good. I mean, it was good to see like the four kind of. And it was good to actually see an episode where there's only really one male combatant on the ally team. Like out of the 5 boarding party, 4 of them were women, and I think that's kind of neat. And they actually formed their own team and worked together. And it happened without any kind of necessary amount of hoo-ha or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with celebrating having a diversity and representation on screen, but like it's great that happened. You shouldn't be here, Katie, unless you've seen the episode, because there's spoilers in this video. So, and I know for a fact you haven't seen this, so go away. And you didn't some Doctor Who, so you shouldn't be asking me that either. You should know. I like how the fight scene between, because we're kind of alluding to it with the Beskar armor, the Beskar kind of staff, spear. I think it's spear, isn't it? They're kind of alluding to the fact that you had a pure Beskar spear, that we were gonna get a fight between Darren and Gideon at some point versus the Darksaber. We did get that, and I'm glad it lasted the right amount of time. Like it wasn't an easy, quick kind of curb stomp battle on either side, especially on the Mandalorian side. But also you expect sort of somebody like the Mandalorian to have vastly more hand-to-hand combat experience, especially with a Mandalorian weapon, than Gideon would. So I like that, after about a couple of minutes, kind of Darren really kind of started to win quite quickly. Arguably. Quite quickly. I think that was good. I think if it draws out too long, it would have stretched kind of suspension of disbelief. And then I think it was very interesting that I'm not sure if it's actually been alluded to before. I think it was very interesting that kind of it was established that really, as in a mid-sense, as a symbol of power, the fact that you can't really just hand it over to Bo-Katan for her to get what she needs out of it. She needs to win it in combat, and that's kind of her main motivation of defeating Gideon herself, rather than it being kind of revenge or pettiness. She actually wants to fulfill this kind of whole honor thing about winning it back. And now that Jaren, and I mean, she should have told him it before. Really, I mean, what was she embarrassed about? If it was that important. So she really should have told people, oh yeah, by the way, the reason why I want to attack Gideon myself is because I need to I need to win the Darksaber back in combat for it to have any kind of use to me. If she said that would have probably been a little more useful. But I think it's interesting. The thing is, I'm pretty certain, didn't Sabine hand it to her in Rebels without having to, because Sabine had it. eventually just handed it to her. So where is this kind of idea that you have to win it in combat come from? Because it definitely wasn't the case in Rebels. She didn't beat Sabine. I don't think she did she? No. I mean, she didn't beat Sabine. I don't know if there was someone between Sabine and her who stole off Sabine, and I don't think so. I can't really recall that. So I'm confused about where this whole winning back the Darksaber plot point has come from. As interesting as it is, and as exciting as it is to see where it turns out, I'm also glad they didn't actually kill Gideon in this episode. I was strongly expecting it. I was strongly expecting him to get killed at some point during this episode, and the fact that he didn't, I find it is interesting, and I'm good, because it means that it's a plot point to carry over. Although he might just disappear between seasons, because all they really wanted to do was hand him over to the New Republic for bounty, essentially. So and pay. So maybe he just won't. Maybe this isn't the last. Maybe this is the last we see of him. It's just he wasn't going to die, which I guess is fine. Your villains don't have to die. I mean, he has the potential to come back later on anyway. So I've been talking for 11 minutes now. We haven't got to the big part of this episode, really, which is, I guess, what everyone's going to be talking about. Luke Skywalker's back, and more surprisingly, Mark Hamill apparently came back to play him again, which was surprising. Good surprising. I would have been annoyed if they brought Luke Skywalker back and not had Mark Hamill play him, but they brought him back, and Mark Hamill did play him, and that was great in that respect. People have been debating which Jedi would we get back, and presumably in the season finale, would we get back? People speculated Luke, because obviously Luke was one of the Jedi who were still out there. I'm trying to remember off the fact that my chroma key is bleeding through my armrest. It's annoying me. I can see it in the corner of my eye, and I'm trying to be like, go away, but obviously I can't go away because it's not physically there. I suppose it's also the case behind my chair, anyhow. So yeah, obviously the Jedi who we know who are alive around this time are like, Luke Skywalker, Ezra Bridges, Ahsoka Tano herself. I haven't played it yet. I think I have it, so it's on my to-do list. But the Jedi kid from Fallen Order, or whatever the Jedi game is, that was out on the PS4. I've got it. I haven't got around to playing it yet. So they're speculating one of those characters. I honestly thought it was not in any way going to be Luke, because I don't think they were going to get Mark Hamill back for this, and I couldn't see them doing it any other way. I couldn't see them, as much people have pointed out that Sebastian Stan is a very good double for Mark Hamill. I couldn't see them doing that either. I thought that'd be too good to be true. So I was like, well, either it's going to be Ahsoka Tano, and the whole thing about her not wanting to train him is going to be a bit of a kind of just a plot point, a way to stretch out the plot. Or it'd be kind of a Jedi we haven't seen before. People had speculated it'd be Mace Windu, and I mean, to be fair, that would probably actually be quite a good twist and resolution of his character, rather than falling out a window. But no, it was Luke Skywalker, and they got Mark Hamill back, and that was surprising, but in a good way, I guess. I think it was also great because we got to actually see Luke Skywalker fight on screen in his prime. I mean, we saw him spar with Leia in Rise of the Skywalker. We obviously see him fight Vader in Return of the Jedi, but he's still basically a very new Jedi at that point. This is him very much in the prime. And I kind of figured it'd be him with that sort of green lightsaber and the black robes, because that's very much his style. And yeah, it was great to see him kind of, basically curb stomp the Dark Troopers. The CGI... The CGI was kind of... It made me believe it was a human, but it made me confused, as if I was watching a human who was meant to be Mark Hamill, or... I was so I was like, oh, this is a CGI Mark Hamill, or this is a very good lookalike Mark Hamill, but not quite Mark Hamill. I think because it kind of kept shifting in how good it was. Um, it's not clear what technology they used here. It's not clear if they basically CGI'd Mark Hamill's face onto another actor, like they did with Moff Tarkin by putting Peter Cushing's face onto Guy Henry, I think his name was. So using that same technology, the only difference being Mark Hamill voiced the character rather than Guy Henry doing an impression. I hope it's not that. I have a suspicion it might be. I hope, and I really hope it's not, because I guess that kind of end of the day is very much the same kind of thing as doing the Guy Henry thing. Or it was Mark Hamill actually physically there, and they just de-aged him. But now I'm thinking about it, that seems less likely, because Mark Hamill, being older, has a larger body build now than he did when he played Luke in the era this is set in. And whilst Disney have more or less perfected the de-aging technology, I don't know, because like a lot of Marvel is CGI people. The like the costumed heroes, and even the uncostumed heroes, a lot of them are CGI people. Like, there's no actors there, there's no stunts there, it's all CGI, but they make them look like real people quite good. So I don't know what they're doing. I don't know. I don't think we'll find out for at least a while, and I'm curious to know which route they went. This is kind of what I'm really wanting to know. Did they go CGI? Did they recreate his face CGI Lee on a actor's body, and someone else's actor's body? All his contribution was voicing the character, which maybe actually I'm leaning towards now, because it seems like the thing that the most easily get Mark Hamill back to do, because he's more always happy to kind of voice reprise stuff and do voice work. Or was Mark Hamill there physically on set? I mean, there was in the credits, there was, and I know for fact there was an actor double, but he could have just been doing, the sword work, for example, or certain shots, for example. Like, was Mark Hamill at least there doing the facial expressions? Was his face doing the acting? Was it de-aged, or did they just plant someone's face, deep fake wise, but probably using CGI rather than footage on someone else? I'm not sure. But I mean, ultimately, in terms of effects, I think I'd rank this middle. I think Leia was probably the most realistic CGI recreation in Disney. Then it's probably this one, and then it was Moff Tarkin. But Moff Tarkin has a lot more exposure, was lit a lot better, and appeared from a longer part of the film. I always say Moff Tarkin. I never had a problem with deepfake Moff Tarkin in Rogue One, but I always felt we should have only seen him in shadow or by reflection. I think seeing him dead on when technology wasn't as great as it could have been at that point was a mistake. I think if they'd done it via reflection and shadow, they would have got with it better, and it would have been received much better. I don't understand why people think Leia's deepfake face was worse and the worst. To me, it looks fine. Pale, sure, but so was Leia really at that time. So I didn't mind. It was a cool scene, and I was on the edge of my seat watching it, and the reveal was great, and that scene was great. Unfortunately, there is no way to say it, a Duke's Ex Machina. Because, and it's even more egregious, because really, it's one of the most kind of potent forms of a Duke's Ex Machina. I don't know why I'm saying Dukes, it's Deus Ex Machina. I'm pronouncing it wrong for some bizarre reason, even though I should know better, having done 1 year ancient Greek, Latin rather, because it's Latin. It's Latin, but it's a Latin translation of a Greek plot device. Hence, I'm confusing myself. This is beside the point. I'm just confused. It's been a long couple of months. It is very much a DX Deus Ex Machina, because really none of the protagonists, Jaren, Fennec, June, Boba, Bo-Katan, the other Night Owl, none of them had to be there, and we would have resulted in the exact end result. I mean, unless you want to argue that Luke needed help getting on board the ship, and I don't think I don't think that was really going to be the case. If none of the protagonists had gone after Grogu, because presumably Grogu was following the Force call that Luke was following the Force call that Grogu did a couple of episodes ago, and clearly that was enough to lead him here, even though he'd moved from the spot he was in. So had Grogu not had the guys not gone after Grogu, had they just given up after the kid was taken a couple of episodes ago, we would have resulted in the exact same place we are now. Well, more or less. I mean, they wouldn't have captured Moff Gideon, or maybe they would have. I mean, Luke's sister's running the New Republic, so presumably he could have just dropped him off to her anyway. I mean, there wouldn't be the whole issue about the Darksaber, but I mean, maybe it would still be probably in Luke's care. Whether Luke would know what to do with it isn't clear. Yeah, that's the thing that's put me off. It's like, well, this just means that not all the heroes, and I guess that's what it was turning me off the whole action sequences. Nothing was really at stake in the end because Luke was gonna swipe in and save the day anyway. So it was greatly executed, but when you think about it, it kind of takes away from a lot of the stakes of the episode. So that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I really liked watching it, and I think it was a great season finale. I just think when you think about it, I think it's something you shouldn't think about too much. Like it from a narrative, dualistic, meta perspective, it defeats itself as a story. From a narrative, Watsonian perspective, obviously none of the protagonists knew this was going to happen, and so they would have done what they had to do. What they had to do. That's kind of the perspective on that. But I mean, what was interesting about seeing is two things: Jaren's finally given up Grogu, and Grogu's finally let himself be given up. Let himself being given. Grogu permitted himself to be taken away. He was happy for Luke to take him away to train him. I think this is good. I think it's good for the Mandalorian next season to move away from Grogu as being the driving part of the plot. I don't think that means he doesn't have to come back to this season ever again, but I think it's good that we're able to let the show move on to a new story. And I'm actually buzzing to figure out where they're going to take the story next now that we don't actually have an explicit lead. I mean, obviously there's a whole Mandalore issue, and that's been built up a lot, so perhaps Mandalore issue is where we're going to go next, which makes sense because the show is called Mandalorian, and so maybe it's good to actually shift gears and focus a lot on Mandalore. That's what I think, and that's why I hope it's going. Also interesting is that Jaren took off his helmet again. It's like 2 times in 2 episodes. This time he didn't have to. He chose to. He did it for Grogu's benefit, but he did it in a room full of other people, which kind of now seems to be like he's completely and utterly kind of moved on from his craziness promise. And I guess it's interesting to see where the character now goes. It wasn't a moment of desperation. It was him letting go of that promise to himself. And it made sense as a character beat, I suppose. It just depends on where they take it next. Because now, obviously, a whole bunch of people have seen him take off his helmet. I mean, these are all people who will probably keep it secret anyway. But it was always ever a promise to himself more than anything else. So we'll be interesting to see kind of where all that goes. And obviously there's a thing about Darksaber. People are wondering, does this mean Lucas can make more appearances in the series? I don't think so. I hope not, unless it's executed in a better way than this was, frankly. I do think it was only ever meant to be a kind of one-off appearance, and if he appears again, it should only be just as brief. If for another reason, then obviously to disguise technology, because that's usually the way you get around to things. You know, if your technology isn't perfect, then disguise around it, and that way it usually works better than there's some parts of both. But I generally, I don't. I'm not tired. You could sleep. I generally don't think we'll see him again in any kind of exposed fashion. This is also I beg the question of what happens to Grogu. I mean, either he reappears in the series, or Grogu's eventual fate is to die by Kylo Ren's hands, unless he escapes otherwise. I mean, he escaped one massacre, so it would be a bit annoying if he got defeated by a lesser massacre. But that was what people are speculating he'd end up if he ends up back in the hands of Skywalker. And yeah, then we had the post-credit scene, which basically established that Boba Fett was going to get a spin-off, which was spoiled for me, but thankfully not the reason why. And last week on, it was great. He just kind of walked into Jabba's palace and shot everyone, and like didn't even say a word. And I think that's kind of very Boba Fett. And they kind of established that Boba Fett's now he's basically following the same steps Darth Maul did after Darth Maul's resurrection from a pit, and that's basically take over a crime syndicate and make a piece for yourself. We don't see what happens with any other characters, so hopefully we pick up on that in the new series. I mean, they're all left kind of posing on this bridge, so be interesting to see what happens there. Yeah, I don't think it was as impactful an ending as the season 1 finale. It was definitely less of a Western and more of a Star Wars episode through and through. Yeah, as I mentioned, it set up some interesting points for this next season, which I hope I picked up from. Resolved the Grogu plot in perhaps a bit too neat of a fashion. But I mean, it was still very enjoyable. So I mean, it wasn't the best kind of way they could have gone with it narratively, but they executed it very well. So who am I going to blame? Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. I'm gonna probably now go watch Star Trek Discovery. So I'll see you. Well, we'll do one of these next week. So whichever next show I start to watch, probably WandaVision in about just under a month's time. That seems to be kind of probably the logical next thing you'll see here. So, guess I'll see you then. Bye.